I am the slave of the Quran while I still have life. I am dust on the path of Muhammad, the chosen one. If anyone interprets my words in any other way, I deplore that person, I deplore his words. Those are the very words of Maulana Jalaladdin Rumi. Author and scholar Shems Friedlander solidly places Rumi within the heart of Islam. In his book, Maulana Jalaladdin Rumi's Forgotten Message, Friedlander also calls for a study of the true essence of Rumi as a Sufi saint and founder of a Sufi path. Friedlander says the cure for our spiritual amnesia lies in integrating Rumi's lessons into our everyday lives, as each verse of the Mesnavi is a teaching and a love letter. Rumi and Sufism scholar and author Shems Friedlander joins us now in our studio. Thank you so much for being with us today, Shems. Now, start off by telling me about your latest book and what Rumi's Forgotten Message is.
Well, people have forgotten that all of Rumi's thoughts, the roots of all of Rumi's thoughts is the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad. And they look at Rumi as a poet. He was not only a poet. We should be looking at Rumi not as a poet, but as a lover of Allah. If we look at Rumi as Maulana Jalaladdin, as a lover of Allah, then we can see the essence of everything that comes out of him and why he expresses things the way he does.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of brings me to how he's perceived in the West as well, because some people mix his teachings as between the physical love and the metaphysical love. Tell me a bit about that and that confusion that there is in the West of Maulana Jalaladdin Rumi.
Maulana Jalaladdin didn't talk about physical love. He talked about metaphysical love, the love of Allah, the love of the Prophet Muhammad. And everything centered around that. And he gave us, as a guide, he gave us a way of living. He gave us what we call a book, but I don't call it a book. I don't call the Mesnavi a book. I call the Mesnavi a sheikh, because Maulana left himself in those writings. Although he never wrote anything himself except the first 18 lines of the Mesnavi, everything was dictated in Persian, and he spoke immensely for many, many years, the last 25 years of his life. And it was a guidance to us. So we need to glean from what he said to overcome our spiritual amnesia, which we're in the age of. Mm-hmm. And the way we do that is by applying Maulana's teachings in our everyday life.
Speaking about applying his teachings in our everyday life, how do we do that?
Well, we have to first study Maulana and how he spoke and what he did. He tells a story in the Mesnavi about Shaiban. Shaiban was a shepherd. And this shepherd, every Friday before he went to Jummah prayer, would draw a circle around his sheep in the earth, right? In order to protect the sheep and from the ravaging wolves. And after that circle was drawn with a Bismillah, he could go off and no wolf would dare enter that circle and no sheep would ever come out of the circle. They were protected. Now, Allah, how do we apply that now into our life?
Exactly.
Allah has given us a circle of remembrance, the zikr Allah. And in this circle of remembrance, Allah has given us a protection from the negativity of the world and the difficulties and dangers that we find ourselves in front of in the world.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, tell me about, within your book, there are many QR codes that readers can come across. Tell me what these QR codes represent and what they're meant for.
Okay, I'm sort of an electronic dinosaur in a way with the internet and social. I don't do social media or anything like that.
Okay.
But my son Omer, we were talking one day and I said, look, what I want to do is make this book really available to this generation. They don't read very much, and I want to find some way to make it interactive. So let's talk about how to do that. And we came up with this idea of QR codes, where you can just scan the QR code if it's on the page, and you then get to see photographs, of various things that apply to information on the page or even videos.
Wow.
So by making it interactive this way, I feel possibly we've attracted a younger audience, people who can now just scan, let's say, a paragraph that talks about the Sema, and then actually see photographs of the Sema and in various forms, 3, 4, 5 photographs. Or there's one scan near the Kaaba and showing people sitting around the Kaaba and making tawaf. And if you scan that in the palm of your hand, you then see the tawaf in Mecca, which relates to the book.
Wow.
So
that's a really good technique that
yes.
you guys have done there, kind of mixing the digital with the literature to speak
no one's
to the
done it
younger
before
generation.
in this way.
I haven't seen it before.
No.
I have to say, I have not seen that
No.
technique used before. Now, Shems, can you, if you can, give me a quote from Maulana Jalaladdin Rumi? It could be your favorite quote and the message that's behind that specific quote.
Okay, well, I don't think quotes are the best way to look at Maulana. I think Maulana told stories, he told the essence of teaching. People have made quotes, of course, but Maulana himself told stories, and in those stories there was a relationship of how to live. For example, there's a story of the grammarian and the boatman. And a grammarian wanted to go across the Bosphorus. And he got on one of those small boats where it just rowed by one person. And he was very haughty and very arrogant. And halfway across the Bosphorus, he said to the boatman, this poor man who was just rowing him, "Tell me, my good sir, do you know anything about grammar?" And the boatman looked at him and said, "What? No." And he says, "Ah, well, half of your life has been wasted." And the boatman felt terrible, but he didn't say anything, and he kept rowing and rowing. And then a storm kind of came up, and the boat was having some problems in the water. And the boatman said to the grammarian, "Tell me, sir, do you know how to swim?" And he said, "Actually, I don't know how to swim." He says, "Ah, well, your whole life has been wasted because we're about to capsize in this whirlpool." So here's a story that Maulana tells, right? And the essence of that story is that if you're arrogant, your arrogance will turn into something else and never be able to accommodate you in a good way. So that arrogance then would cause this person to actually lose his life and someone else to lose friends or lose other things. And so Maulana always had something specific behind
exactly,
what he
important
said.
lessons that he's actually teaching.
Absolutely.
We are approaching December, which means that Seb-i Arus is approaching as well. And there are going to be ceremonies taking place all across Konya. What can we expect this year? And if I'm not mistaken, you're going to be taking place within those ceremonies as well this year.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about what to expect during Seb-i Arus.
First, we can expect upwards of 50,000 people coming to the week of Seb-i Arus. Now, Seb-i Arus itself it means the wedding night of Maulana. It represents the night that he passed from this world and went to his beloved, Allah. And even Maulana said, "Don't look for me in the grave, look for me in the hearts of learned men." So in Konya, this Seb-i Arus, we're going to see they're setting up a big tent. It started last year in the Maidan, where every day there's 2 or 3 people that are asked to give a talk, and there's music in the tent, and it's for the whole week. And there are many people will be giving talks there. We'll talk about sohbets, like the thing I want, just that I mentioned the word sohbet, I think what's very important to note here regarding Maulana and Shems is that Shems was not the master of Maulana. Shems was not the sheikh of Maulana. Maulana was already a sheikh when he met Shems. He was a Kubrawiya sheikh initiated by his father, who was known as the Sultan of Scholars, Bahauddin Velid, at that time. And it's important to note that because people have misunderstood that and think that Shems was the master and the sheikh of Maulana, but they were sohbet sheikhs. They sat together and spoke of spiritual matters in the loftiest, the highest manner. And this is what's important to know, that this kind of spiritual conversation is very much part of what happens in Konya, what will happen. Of course, there'll be semas. There's a sema every night leading up to the 17th, which is the Seb-i Arus night, and there'll be a big sema on that night.
Speaking of semas, these photos were actually taken by you?
They were taken by me, and I just saw them here for the first time in a long time. They were done in the 1970s. I think it was 1973 when I photographed this in Konya. So it goes on. And don't
Brings
forget,
back memories.
we have one thing that's very important I'd like to sort of leave you with is that we are praying more now to Apple than to Allah. And I'm really an advocate of trying to change that. And one thing I'll just leave you all with is that Atesh Bas Veli was loved by Mevlana. He was his personal cook. And the secret of Atesh Bas Veli's cooking, which every one of us can apply in our own lives, is that when he cooked a pot of food, whatever it was, bulgur or meat or soup or rice, whatever he was cooking, with a wooden spatula and spoon, he wrote the name of Allah on the food.
We should take that as an example and implement it more into our daily lives.
And a light will come to us and those that eat if we apply that.
Exactly. Shems, thank you so much for joining us today on Showcase and sharing your wise words of wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you.